Okay, thanks everyone for coming for the second talk of the afternoon. Really happy to do this one because with us we have Todd from Resolution. Thank you so much for coming, Todd. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, we're gonna show some really ingenious ways of using virtual production with you. Maybe first we come back a bit of the history of the studio, how you started with VP, how we started to collaborate with Mo-Sys.
Yeah, absolutely. We were sort of. Do you want to do videos first, or just do a little background first?
Yes, we have some contents.
So I'm Chief Technology Officer of Resolution Studios. We're a large studio complex in Chicago. We have 4 large studios, and I hate the word pioneer, but we really kind of were one of the pioneers in virtual production long before Mandalorian. We're sort of fortunate in that we sort of have 2 divisions. Half of our clients know us as a large studio complex, and the other half we do very large live event scaling. And so we sort of figured out virtual production long before there even was a term virtual production, because the story I say is when you have a bunch of LED guys hanging out with a bunch of film guys, eventually a camera comes out, right? And if you want to go to the next slide there. So we have 4 stages, huge inventory of LED. The tile that we currently really love is some planar 1.9 mil with Brompton. Really, some of the first tile that coming out on the market that was built specifically for virtual production. We're super happy with it. And we have a long relationship with Mo-Sys, really early time user. And I would say the camera tracking is the missing link that makes it all possible. It's the piece where you go from LED and plates into a camera tracked environment.
So it really makes a difference with plates that you can have parallax and
totally, yeah. It completely changes the game. And then we drive that with 12 Unreal servers.
Actually, maybe it's better. You can keep it.
Yeah. We sort of serve all markets. So from TV commercial, obviously there's a ton of TV commercial work in Chicago, feature film, episodic, indie, documentaries. And, one of the things that we've spent a lot of time is really supporting the industry, all of the vendors, in that, early on, my goal was not just to be the best house in Chicago, but to build the industry and get it. I do think that there will be a time where all studios will be required to have some sort of LED technology and camera tracking. We're not there yet, but people don't really understand virtual technology until they see it in person. So we spend a lot of time doing demos and things like that, because it's when they first see it, in person, then the wheels start turning, and
And you have, I think it's interesting, and I'm sure you will talk about it, but it made sense also to work together with the way you approach virtual production as well. It's not necessarily what we think sometimes of big volumes, or you have a more agile, I will say, approach to it.
Yeah, so many people think that The Mandalorian invented virtual production, which is so not true. There's a lot of us doing it long before The Mandalorian. But we do owe Mandalorian a little debt of gratitude, because pre-Mandalorian, the conversations with clients were focused around convincing them that this was a valid way to go. And I always say, if you have Star Wars, arguably one of the largest recognizable brands in the world, they have enough money to shoot anywhere on the planet as they have, right? They chose this technology. And so it really changed the conversation for everybody. And that's where you really started all of the big investments that you see, not just from Mo-Sys, but from the whole industry, into sort of coming together and do it. And, just because of Mandalorian worked at a very large scale, I think a lot of people in the beginning thought that you needed a 180-foot giant wall. And we do that, but, I always say scaling up is easy. It's money times time, right? Time and money. Scaling down is actually a lot harder. And we put a lot of effort into that for, we do, with 4 stages, we want to keep them all busy. Having a scalable from a small to large is really important, right? There's a lot of really great indie or documentary stuff that can't afford a 180-foot wall. It's nice doing it, but actually I think it was more getting everything to work small and more affordable took a lot more work. This we have a presentation here, a film that we just did called Close Encounters, and this is a little behind the scene. What's interesting is this is a film that came across our desk, and I was really interested because it's a short, really good creative, but it was also the only way you could possibly do this was virtual production. And it just turned out that on the weekend that we shot this, it was minus 30 degrees outside. Okay. So we'll go ahead and roll the video here.
Let's have a look. Which is interesting as well, that you just said, is like many, like I guess, as you say, it's probably the way it was, the marketing runs, that people think that virtual production is just for the top high-end production, which is great for it, but it's also all the advantages for mid-budget production when they
absolutely
can leverage.
In fact, I think people come to virtual production for different reasons, right? I would say the hardest part of virtual production is bidding the job, right? But I think that the benefits of virtual production for a $30 million film, a $5 million indie, or a documentary is actually way greater than a big Avengers film or a Star Wars film, right? Being able to shoot, 3 locations in one day. We on a couple of our shoots, we've done 5 to 9 locations in a day. That's just not possible. And so, a good example is we worked on a project called Far Away Nearby. It was a decent budget documentary, but budgets for documentaries are not that big to start with. This is one of the better ones. The director had come by for one of our meetings, and we had this really great conversation. She was really inspired. She goes, we have this film coming up, and you get a budget approved, and the amount of money that you get is always way less than what you asked for. And she says, we spent years writing this creative, and then all of a sudden we get our budget. We're super excited, but there's a lot of things that we just can't do. And so, they were in the process of how do we pull those scenes out or cover them differently. So we did it in virtual production, and it really transformed this film. It was about a guy who discovered gravitational waves, who also had a lot of mental illness. A little bit of a Beautiful Mind story. And without the virtual production, it would have been a science film. But it turned in that really the film was more about mental illness, different than Beautiful Mind. But it's that, the passion of this guy inventing something that it wasn't until after his death that turns out he was right along. Everybody thought he was crazy, and it turns out he was right on the money. And so the story changed because to be able to reenact it in a way that's completely believable and cinematic, a lot of people who may not like the film, all of a sudden, it's not just a science film. It's really about just perseverance and, trying to prove something that you truly believe in.
I really like this one because usually also in documentaries there's a kind of a formula for documentary, right? Especially for recon when you reshoot, it's really it's the way you shoot documentaries, right? So when I saw what you did with this project, I thought it was really interesting because, as you say, it feels like we are watching almost a feature film. It's a type of budget and as ambitious as that, but for a documentary, it's amazing to see that actually.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorites as an example of what you can achieve with virtual production, and really in that case, I guess it's not even should we do it in real or in virtual? It's like if we don't do it that way, we're not gonna be able to do it.
It's not gonna happen. He slipped on some ice out in the wilderness. He was walking his dog, and he wound up dying from exposure. Not an easy thing to be shooting out something like that. The way he discovered gravitational waves was a giant, 50-ton bar of metal that they were doing these incredibly things. Doesn't exist anymore. There's no it would have been impossible to build the sets. It would have been impossible to recreate it, at a documentary budget. One of the things we're just kind of talking about, one of our beliefs, given that we've been in this for so long, is in the importance of not building a rigid structure for virtual production. A lot of people don't realize that LED tile kind of comes in a staging version and an install version, and the install version is half the price. And I always say that it's one of the biggest mistakes studios make. A lot of the studios that made this decision are really regretting it and going back and fixing it. Because the reality is there's no perfect size or shape of an LED volume. And so, we learned this very early on. And the perfect example is the LED layout for, say, car driving plates, which I always say is like the low hanging fruit of virtual production. It's super simple. It's easy to get set up, is really different than a big outdoor vista scene, right? And so we're constantly reconfiguring our LED. And so the reason why that I bring this up, it kind of really ties into why we chose Mo-Sys. We looked at pretty much every camera tracking system out there, and we really found that the Mo-Sys worked best for our environment, where we're constantly changing our LED configuration. In terms of the things that we're really sensitive to is not having to reconfigure the system between 4 different stages, the fact that I can have 1 or 2 units and use it across all of my stages, but also if we have a big name director or DP in, I don't ever want to say to him, you can't put that light, that scrim, that truss, whatever, because you're blocking some of my cameras, right? And I don't want to have to reset those cameras up. So it was the perfect system for us of having just sort of a rock solid system, great performance and tracking, very easy to train an assistant how to mount the unit and on the camera and stuff. But that reconfigurability, it really made a big difference to us versus other systems out there.
It's good to hear, actually.
Well, and I always say, maybe I'm old school, but like when you buy a product for us, it's more important than just having a great product. It's the company behind it, right? Mo-Sys is known for having really amazing support. The film industry, we work crazy hours, weekends, nights, and stuff. And if there's some sort of issue, being able to get somebody on the phone really quickly is really important. And I think in virtual production, the concept of amazing support is sort of like kind of gone on the back burner for a lot of companies. Perfect example is Unreal. We love Unreal, but Unreal doesn't make a lot of money in virtual support. They make it from gaming, right? So there's, try calling Unreal and getting support. It's, it's brutal. And even if you do get somebody onto them solving your problem, so I think a lot of other companies, they don't put enough focus into the importance of good support. And, so that's something that now that for us is like a really high priority.
Well, I'm glad you say that because it's really important for us, actually. It's like, as you said, we work on set, right? So that's all about communication, all about understanding the limitation of the technologies and also what we can achieve with it. So for us, it's really important, the support and also the discussion with studio like yours. I remember even during the pandemic, there was a lot of experiment on your side. I think there's a video after where that's we will show, but it was discussion with the team and understanding your needs as well for us, because that's also influencing how we develop as well, right? So having this feedback and this communication for us is crucial.
Right. And, the film industry is a very unique industry compared to most people's jobs. You guys are very a part of the film community, which is really important because you just understand that, like, there's certain things that just happen on shoots, changes last minute, creative direction changes that we have to react immediately. And that's something we really appreciate, but it's something that I think anyone looking at any products, they should factor that in as something that they're looking for.
Well, thank you so much. And always a pleasure to collaborate because you always come up with great ideas and we love to support them. When you mentioned earlier, you're not going to say to a director of photography or director, we cannot change this light, etc. That's so true. For us, that's also when we develop technology, we have to keep in mind that it shouldn't affect the workflow in a way that it's reducing what you used to do on a movie set. It's more like how do we enhance it and how do we build into that to make it even better. But you shouldn't have to I mean, you have to rethink your workflow
Yeah.
from pre to post, but you shouldn't restrict your creativity.
Right. We always say we're a yes company. There's companies that are no companies. It's like my job is to say yes,
Exactly.
right, and figure out how to keep that. Especially, and as you do bigger and bigger shows, the importance of that are really, really critical. We've fortunate to work with a lot of really amazing DPs and directors. And some of them can be very, my way or the highway sort of people. And it's something that only in working with other studios that we realize the number of times people say no, because to me that just seems impossible. Like the answer is yes, and we will figure out a way to make sure it's yes. I didn't think no was even an option.
I mean, and that's every. You have to say yes because every project is different, right? And that's the beauty of it as well.
Well, they always say you're only as good as your last project. It's brutally true.
Yeah.
People are always looking at you can do the most amazing work, and nobody notices. But if there's any sort of rough spot, that's kind of what people talk about, right? So there's a lot of it's a very high bar that you have to stay at to be relevant.
And we love that. We love challenges and hear your challenges and propose you some technology and you to try it and be happy with it. So that's great. I think we have some other examples as well that you shared with us today. Yeah, that was the one I was talking about. When was that? So
this was shot right at the end of the pandemic. Obviously, we're all wearing masks, and so this was a job, and we had a lot of behind the sines and stuff. So this is a little piece that we did just sort of on Mo-Sys, how it works, and the real world. One of the things is that at the time this was created, I'd say 90% of our jobs, the director and TP, this was their first time on a volume stage, right? And they were learning at the same time. Now, virtual production has become popular enough that probably 60% of the people are very opinionated already because they've done enough of it that, and this kind of goes back to the importance of reconfigurable LED. It's very common for now when we're bidding on a job to get a CAD drawing from the DP of this is exactly how we want the LED to be, because they went from being a total novice to doing enough shoots where it's something as simple as being able to move an LED wall would have made their life a lot easier or a lot harder. And so, so this video sort of kind of illustrates that as people become more and more fluent with this pipeline, the importance of being able to modify and change your system becomes even more important. We've been working on
and you mentioned earlier the fact that in our sense our technology is absolute. Becomes really important when you start doing set extension. You need to record this data for post-production as well. So that's a way to kind of leverage smaller LED walls. If you have all this pipeline, suddenly you can do much more with it, right?
Yeah, even something as simple as, we have the advantages of height in our studio. So we tend to, rather than ground support our LED walls, we fly them from motorized truss. Once a week, I get a request from somebody, hey, we want to do a wall that's 24 feet tall. I'm like, hey, we'd be happy to do that, but why does it have to be 24 feet tall? Are you doing well, we have one shot, low angle looking up. I'm like, well, we just use a 14-foot wall and we just hit the button and raise the wall. Do you really want to spend another 50 grand? I'll be happy to do it, but it's really kind of pointless. It's we built the system to handle those requests as part of as our baseline.
That's why pre-production is so important, right?
Yeah, I mean, pre-pro is the mantis for everybody. And with virtual production, it's even more. With anything, it's boy, had we known that this was something somebody was thinking about, it would have been a lot easier. But you just have to plan for uncertainty.
We have some other examples that you shared with us, I think.
So this is a pilot that we worked on that actually just got picked up called Resignation. And it's a really good script. And it turned out it's the first episodic pilot shot 100% virtual production. So I think there was about 30 or 40 different locations. It's a decent sized budget, but like literally every shot in there except the credits. We're trying to figure out how to do the credits on virtual, but
Star Wars.
But this is one where we were really attracted to it because it was trying to figure out like what's the max, like push things to the limits. Like, we did a day where, in a 10-hour day, 9 virtual locations. And, so we just did 2 LED walls, one on one side of the stage, one on the other. And you just ping ponged, you shoot this way for a little bit, they're resetting the next one, flip around. And to be able to do 9 in a 10-hour day is pretty crazy. So there's a lot of things in here that, nobody knows where that upper limit is on virtual production yet. Just when we think of like, this is going to be what's going to be the most complicated, and then it keeps getting higher and higher and higher, right? And so I think that's kind of true with technology in general, and especially as things get productized. And it wasn't 10 years ago. Virtual production was a science experiment. Right? Like we had a lot of custom code and, all custom systems, and it worked great, but it was really complicated. Now, most of those components, we can go out and buy a product that does it. We were so happy when we found the Mo-Sys because we started with, a Connect and all the various ways that people built their own system to a system where I turn it on, it works, and I don't have to really think about it anymore.
It's good to hear for us always.
Yes.
And so I think if we click, we can see a bit of the project.
Yeah, so this, shows you kind of goes a lot of things. And one of the things that we always kind of look at is like the differences between something as simple as a very small room or a very large room, and the importance of like LED configuration. Something that is, and this was actually done on a fairly small wall. I think the wall was maybe 30 by 14, relatively small, and it looks really, really good. And
makes a lot of sense for pilots as well, right?
Because yeah, absolutely. And it what's interesting when you look at the film, it looks much, but it looks, when people find out the budget, it's usually half of what they would have guessed, just based on the number of locations and stuff. And I said, well, that's the power of virtual production. It didn't cost that much to create some more additional volumes.
And I think like you mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of marketing around massive volumes.
Right.
So in the mind of people, it feels like they think, virtual production will increase the cost of my production. Well, it should be completely the other way around, right? And that's
totally. Yeah, and I was saying before that everybody comes to virtual production for a different reason. A lot of times they're trying to do something that is either driven by effects, or they're trying to shoot in an environment that is very difficult, right? Logistics caused it to us. But we keep finding all of these other things that are huge cost savings that you didn't really predict. And a perfect example is we worked a bunch of scenes on Paper Girls. Okay. And so the main actress is a minor, and 80% of her shots are at night. So, they came to virtual production because we had a stunt and they didn't want to be at night on a street trying to do a stunt with a minor. So they wanted to do it in a controlled environment. And then they quickly realized, what, with a minor actor, like you get them for 6 hours during the day or 2 hours at night. And they're like, we just basically got our main actress 4 more hours a day. Right. And, so they wound up doing a lot more virtually. That's not something that anyone thought of. It's just like, holy cow, that really made a huge difference. So there's a lot of different reasons why somebody goes, and we keep finding more and more. It's not always logistic. It's not already cost saving. Sometimes it's safety. But, working in a controlled environment, there's always cost benefits and logistical benefits when you're in a controlled environment.
Exactly. We have a last one example. Actually, it's footage from far away nearby. Oh, no, it's not. Well, we mentioned it anyway, so we will send links if people wants to see it, right? Any questions? So I have a question for you.
Sure.
So what do you see for you the future of the studio? Mm-hmm. Do you look into being even more kind of agile with the production, being able to have workflows that allows you to be even more fast to set them up? Or do you see it more than it will be more studios dedicated for different type of shots?
Yes, I actually get this question quite a bit. For us as a studio, because we're in so many markets, for us, it's building as much flexibility into how we work versus everything else. And so I think that that's sort of the key in terms of, I don't want one stage that's limited or dedicated to one particular type of production. To me, we have 4 different size stages, but we want to be able to make sure that we can adapt. I mean, it's not uncommon for us to have, like the shoot I'm going into this week, it's a 14-day shoot, and I'll reconfigure that LED 4 times during that time. Like, we're fortunate to have, we do all our own rigging and our staff to do that. So like when we wrap at, 8:00 at night, another crew is going to reconfigure that LED so that when I come in the next day, it's ready for us. And, also, and that also comes on, I think, the technical side, just in terms of, we put a lot of effort into scaling. We scale our wall and the servers independently in a system that doesn't change all that often. We always have like an E2 or a spider in between the inputs and the outputs. And, so we generally don't like, trying to line up, the number of servers are determined by the number of LED processors or vice versa. To me, that's a completely backwards way of looking at it. You should be able to independently scale up or down either side. So like in a typical setup, we may have, 4 to 6 Brompton SX40s as for LED processors. And we generally always have, around 6 to 12 Unreal processors. And that one should not be driving the other. There's tons of products out to handle that.
Well, that's a good takeaway for the audience today. Thank you so much, and look forward to. I think you gonna release a documentary. I think it's already released.
Yeah. It's just about to be released, so keep an eye. It's called Far Away Nearby. It's a really great film.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Todd. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.